I recently came across a book written by a whole life insurance agent who, surprise, surprise, wrote a book lambasting indexed universal life insurance. The book is called Lapsed, and it's written by an advisor by the name of Elan Moas, who makes a living selling none other than, you guessed it, whole life insurance. His book is rife with dramatic, highly charged, and at times apocalyptic rhetoric around what will likely befall you if you make the mistake of purchasing an indexed universal life policy. Let's take a look at a few excerpts, and as I've done in at least a dozen videos over the last year, I will debunk these criticisms one by one. In the first excerpt, he begins with a breathless description of an anti-IUL meeting he attended at a corporate office of, wait for it, a whole life insurance company. Quote, in June 2017, I attended the IUL class at Mass Mutual Academy in Orlando. Mass didn't offer an IUL, so the premise of the class was, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. The focus of the class was the index investment return calculation methodology of the IUL, which involves the corporate use of options, which can be a problem in a volatile market. Is coronavirus 2020 a volatile market? Is an up and down stock market, crashing interest rates to zero, unemployment and inflation issues, and 1,100,000 COVID-19 deaths as of Q3 2023 volatile? This can cause the IUL to lower their caps and participation rates, which means lower the IUL policyholders' investment gain potential. And yes, many IUL insurers have already done that. Okay, so Mass Mutual, once again, a whole life carrier, described the IUL as too good to be true. This is, of course, a straw man argument because a proper description of IUL will reveal it to be not too good to be true, but exactly what it purports to be. Regardless of what you might see on TikTok, an IUL's true purpose is to give you stock market exposure up to a cap with a guarantee against market loss. When explained properly, it isn't too good to be true. It's just slightly to the right of a whole life policy on the risk continuum with the potential for a commensurate increase in return. It won't outperform your stock portfolio, and it shouldn't be seen as a replacement for a Roth IRA. It's meant to be a bond alternative that provides returns of between 5 and 7% net of fees over the life of the program. Are there irresponsible advisors on TikTok and elsewhere who do make it sound too good to be true? Certainly, but the author is simply conflating lousy life insurance agents with lousy products, as so many others before him have done. Next, he suggests that volatile markets are what determine the cost of the options utilized in the IUL's hedging strategy. This, in turn, informs the cap levels of the IUL. He says this principle is hammered home in that same meeting at that corporate office of Mass Mutual. Let's take a look at what he has to say. Quote, the focus of the class was the index investment returns calculation methodology of the IUL, which involves the corporate use of options, which can be a problem in volatile markets. Close quote. He then goes on to cite the coronavirus pandemic of 2020 and the resultant upheavals in the market as a classic example of market volatility that should keep IUL policyholders awake at night. His explanation of how IUL caps are determined is, alas, only partially true. The bigger factor in determining cap levels is interest rates, and there's absolutely no mention of that in his explanation. That's probably because it doesn't feed into his narrative. Now that interest rates are as high as they've been in 20 years and IUL caps have returned to historically normal levels, he conveniently omitted a crucial detail to color your perception of the IUL's growth potential. Next, he discusses the egregiously evil way in which IUL companies set out to confiscate your money. Quote, the IUL claims to have downside risk capped at 0% in the event of a down market. The downside risk protection allows the insurance company to keep anything above the cap rate in their own pockets. These IUL companies love to keep money in their own pockets. There are multiple slides, displays, and calculations that show that the growth not earned above the cap rate, the upside, over the last 20 years is significantly higher returns than protecting against the crashes, downside. Sorry, folks, with this paragraph, I completely lost all faith in the author as someone who has even a rudimentary understanding of how IULs work. His explanation of how insurance companies make money betrays a basic misunderstanding of how options and caps work and is frankly misleading. Insurance companies don't make money on cap rates. I've talked to plenty of impartial actuaries with major IUL carriers who have told me as much. Cap rates are a function of two things. First, the cost of options, which is informed by the volatility of the stock market, and second, the carrier's options budget, which is a function of interest rates. If your cap is 12% and the S&P does 25%, they don't pocket the difference. The option they purchase allows you to participate in the growth of that index only up to that 12% cap. There's no surplus growth that gets pocketed by the scheming, avaricious insurance company. If the author gets this basic detail wrong, you have to wonder what else he's getting wrong. Okay, next he talks about all the fees that can and will be manipulated by insurance carriers in order to swindle you out of your money. Quote, in some IUL carriers, they are also allowed to change multiple parts of the non-guaranteed elements, NGEs, items. I looked at several IUL illustrations of the big boys, and in general, they can change the premium load fee, the interest rate that is being credited to the fixed account, the administrative fee, other expense charges and fees. Being able to do that is a pure money grab that helps them deplete your cash value and prematurely lapse your policy. I've read their client IUL illustrations. You, the policyholder, didn't. They all have great lawyers, and their adequate disclosures and disclaimers leave you and your policy exposed to their manipulations. Okay, so what he's saying here is that the IUL companies lure you in with the prospect of high returns with no risk, and then they bleed your cash value away by increasing your fees at their leisure. What's more, if they can increase your fees high enough, they can lapse your policy, which of course is their secret intention from the beginning. Fortunately, this claim is rather easily fact-checked. You see, most solid IUL carriers report the rates of return that every generation of policyholders has experienced since policy inception. If what the author says is true, then you would expect rock-bottom returns since inception, perhaps as low as 3 or 4%. But that's not at all what you find when you scrutinize their track records. In the following graphic, you'll see real rates of return from a real IUL from a highly rated company. Since I don't discuss specific IUL companies on this channel, I'll simply refer to this carrier as Company A. When you look at this graphic, you'll see that a policy that was begun in 2006 and has averaged gross returns of just shy of 7% through December 31st, 2021. That's a 15-year track record of 7%. By the way, this company didn't increase those internal expenses a single time over that time frame. Why not? Because this company guarantees their expenses won't change. The only expense that isn't guaranteed is the cost of insurance, which in this company's case also didn't change. Another policy with this company that was begun in 2009 experienced an average annual growth of over 8%. A policy that was begun in 2019 has averaged nearly 9% annual growth. In fact, if you take all of the average rates of return of all 15 generations of policies since 2006, you'll find they average 7.09%. In other words, through all the market and interest rate volatility, which are supposedly lethal to the IUL, these policies still averaged over 7%. How is this possible if companies lure you in with unrealistically high cap rates and then pillage your cash value in an attempt to lapse your policy? In several other videos on this channel, I show you other top-rated carriers who had similar rates of return over similar timeframes. This book employs all the standard tactics of the quintessential IUL hit piece. It conjures up a nightmare scenario in which predatory IUL carriers lure you in with a story that's too good to be true, only to confiscate all your money once they have you in their clutches. Only when you see that the author is ultimately out to sell you a whole life policy, a financial instrument that he repeatedly praises throughout the book, do you understand the true motivation behind this unbalanced, misinformed, highly charged diatribe. The goal here is to scare consumers out of their perfectly adequate IUL policies so they can transfer their cash value to a whole life policy that the author is more than happy to facilitate and for which he would gladly be compensated. Sorry folks, this author is trotting out the same old tired, easily debunked objections that we've all heard countless times and to which I've responded multiple times on this channel. If you like whole life, great. If you like IUL, great, but please don't waste everybody's time by producing these types of intentionally misleading scare tactics. I and the rest of the financial planning community thank you for it. Folks, in the next 10 years, I'm looking to put 100,000 Americans on the road to the 0% tax bracket. If you want to learn more about how to adopt a balanced, comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement that shields you from the impact of higher taxes, head over to davemcknight.com and click on the Connect with an Advisor button. I'm happy to refer you to an advisor in the Power Zero network that has been trained, vetted, and qualified personally by me. If you're a financial professional and want to learn about how to become a certified Power Zero advisor, head over to powerzero.com and opt into my free 3-part video series. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into the comments section below. I'll respond to every single one of them personally. And don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the bell so you never miss a video. This is David McKnight. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.